Hi, I'm Dr. Richard Visser. I spent my whole life in the pursuit of health, well-being, and longevity. In this podcast, I will take you on a journey through the wilderness of scientific research and experiential knowledge. Together, we will clear a path towards optimal health, well-being, and longevity. I started my career as a doctor of chiropractic focused on mind-body medicine, nutrition, and sports medicine. Today, I develop digital platforms to inform and educate by bringing science-based solutions to as many people as possible. I'm excited to share my knowledge, know-how, my methods with you. So please join me on the Visser podcast. Welcome to the Visser podcast, where we'll be discussing health, well-being, and longevity. In today's podcast, which is our third, we'll be continuing our talks about the microbiome. And this is kind of post introduction, post encounter. And the first encounter is at birth through the vaginal canal, our birthing process. That's where we get bathed with our first set of microbiome. Super important. If you do a cesarean section or there isn't another way, then talk to your physician about fecal matter transplant or vaginal fluid transplant to the baby so that the baby does get that first inoculation that is so needed. Further, and we've discussed this in the last episode, you can review that if you need to. We've discussed a lot of things there that are important. But moving on, we're really looking at, okay, so what's next for the child, the baby, before they reach puberty? And it's key that they get exposed. They need environmental antigens, playing in the dirt, getting dirty, eating some dirt, you name it. We cannot be hyper cleanly with the kids. This is key. And I know we're in an age of post-COVID or post-heavy COVID. COVID continues. And in this age, we're used to, just, cleaning our hands, sanitizing, over-sanitizing over and over again. And this is killing the microbiome. So let's not have this happen to our kids. Let's not do this to our kids. Our kids need to be exposed at the earliest age to as much as possible so they can create their diverse microbiome, which will protect them against food allergies, protect them against changes in chemicals in their brain that basically signal, hey, I need to eat more, obesity, changes in the mood through the serotonin that's produced with the microbiome. We're looking at changes in the autoimmune diseases, protection against lupus, Hashimoto's, etc. Really, this is key. But the indicators show us that these are real things that we're dealing with. So it's important to really step up as parents at a younger age and really expose our children to the environment. Have these environmental antigens be their lessons, their teachers, they're boosting their immune system. So we really need to do this. When we look at food and gut diversity and why it matters, well, it matters because when we look at the connection of a diverse gut and not a diverse gut, we see stuff like in a gut that's not diverse, we see obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, arterial stiffness, irritable bowel syndrome, allergies, colitis, rheumatoid arthritis, Parkinson's, depression, autism. All these things can come from a non-functioning or bad functioning microbiome. So we really, really have to tend to our garden, to our microbiome. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we do this. But first, there are other chemicals that influence our microbiome, heavily influence our microbiome. One of them is antibiotics, the intake, especially at an early age. I'm a prime example. I was a preemie and, in the incubator, started with antibiotics, had allergies, had respiratory problems, had asthma, had allergies against dust, animals, dander, you name it. I ended up rotting out my baby teeth because of the antibiotics, and this just went on and on and on to where I was a mess. I was a mess at an early age. I really had to build myself up from scratch, and I still have the remnants of that. So good start is key. The opposite of what I did. And that's why this is so important. And obesity is one of these things. So when we look at emulsifiers, preservatives in our food, artificial sweeteners, and other additives, no good for a microbiome. Not only that, but with artificial sweeteners, we're seeing, an example of sucralose. We're seeing a spike in our glycemic index. So yes, our body, it's touted as, it's not real sugar, but our body sees it as sugar, triggers it, and we got the same problem. One of the studies I love to look at is the Twin UK study, the fiber microbiome study that is the largest in twins. And the reason is because then you kind of, you pull out the gene card because you're dealing with identical twins. So with 300 twins aged 30 to 80, followed for 10 years, being studied, as they could see, most of them gained weight. The ones with high fiber intake had significantly less weight gain and visceral fat. So that's key. Each extra gram of fiber reduced the weight by 2 kilograms. So each extra gram of fiber in your diet consistently reduces your weight gain by 2 kilograms. That's significant. Weight changes and fiber correlated to microbial diversity. So really the diversity was key with these twins. When we look at the twins, we also realize that the difference genetically, so genetic differences with people accounts for 10% of the obese and lean. So it's not that huge. It is there, but it's not that huge. The microbiome is a much bigger identifier of the problem and lets us know that we're in trouble when the diversity is low. So really, this is where we have to look. When we look at these twins, we notice one other thing, and that is we're always looking at glycemic index of foods, and we need to, because it does have an effect, have a huge effect on our insulin, on our hormonal management. And the hormonal management of what we eat and how we eat is huge, has a huge impact on how we gain weight, how we lose weight, how we're able to maintain weight. So the GI index is a great way to look at it. But the problem with the GI index is that it's been generalized. So it's been like, okay, all your starches, so potato, rice, pasta, wine, beer, etc. It's all gonna, give you a high spike, give an insulin spike. But what we've seen is that we looked at a study with the twins again, and both of them had Prosecco to drink, and they had a monitor, blood sugar monitor on. And the more obese of the twins was the one that spiked really high, like they were going pre-diabetic with the Prosecco. And the leaner twin, no spike. It didn't even, do anything with their glycemic index. So indicating that the leaner twin had enough microbiome, or had more diverse microbiome, and could handle Prosecco in their bodies, and it didn't have the effect it had on the obese person. And we see this. We see people that can eat everything or almost everything, drink almost everything, and not gain weight. And then, some of us just look at bread and we're bloating. So, this is another key that we've been missing in diet. Where the simplest thoughts we had was energy in, energy out. We know that's not, that's just scratching the surface. It is a fact, but it's scratching the surface. There's so much more to play, and especially with the hormones. And now we're looking specifically at the GI interaction, the gut microbiome interaction, and it's huge. So what's the recommendation here? The recommendation here is that we all should be checked individually. And that means, have your microbiome sequenced if you have that opportunity. If you don't have that opportunity, do a check, do a glycemic check, put a glucose monitor on, and look at the foods that you like and the drinks that you like, and see what it does. See which ones spike, see which ones don't, so you can really manage better what and how you eat. I might not spike with red wine. I like red wine, so that's perfect for me. I might spike with bread. I probably spike with bread. And so I need to avoid bread. So this gives us a much better picture. We have to, go at this individually. And the microbiome is super individualized. It's not only geography, how do I say this? Specific to geography that we come from, specific to how we ate when we were young and how we eat now, but also just individually, complete different microbiome. So we have to look at this if we're going to solve any of these issues, whether it's obesity, whether it's chronic disease, whether it's autoimmune disease, whether it's, mood, depression, anxiety, any of this stuff. We have to look at it individually. So that's the key, looking at it individually. One of the other things, and talking about obesity, which is my specialty, one of the things that they looked at was, getting 2 mice, and these mice were sterile, so no bacteria, no gut bacteria, nothing, so they could really see the effects. That's good and bad. One, we can see the effects, but it doesn't mean it goes over to humans, and because we have so much more at play in a living human. But okay, it gives us a start. So what we're seeing here is that Christensenella is an anti-fat bacteria, which reduces weight gain after transplantation into the mice. Akkermansia does the same. So we saw these 2 mice, one is on the same diet, one got huge obese, the other one stayed nice and lean. So this gives us a clue in where we need to be looking at these specific bacteria. Now, another thing that came up, and another thing we spoke about in our last episode, was fecal transplant. So they're also seeing that in mice with the fecal transplant, that the recipient mice starts being like the donor. So you get a lean mice that gives their stool to, you transplant the stool to the obese mice starts losing weight. So we're seeing that this is a trigger. So there's been, for specific diseases, there's been pills developed, poop pills, stool from healthy individuals that people take in, and then it reduces recurrent bacterial infections. I mean, it's very effective at that. We're looking at, does it affect the weight? The studies up to now have shown inconclusive, but there's potential there. So they keep looking. But we found that different diseases can be helped by this. So, and it can be helped better than the regulatory medical treatments or antibiotics. So when we look at large intestines, so just a kind of a side view of the wall of the large intestines. On the left side, up top, you're gonna see the microbiome. Huge, colorful, full. I mean, we're talking trillions of these bacteria, virus, fungi, cells that are there, that are helping us, that are, creating the essentials that we need to survive, the energy. And when they do create that, then it can pass the wall. And if we look at the wall, the green, that's, the thick, nice mucus wall that we have there. When we look at this, we can see that this wall is key. We look at our next picture and we look at starving microbes, and this is the point I want to get to. Guess what? Starving microbes mean they're not getting their fiber that they live off, they're not getting their fermented foods that they live off, etc., etc. We're just doing a bad diet. It's a McDonald's diet or a fast food diet or just a bad diet. What we're seeing is that the microbiome needs to survive and starts eating the wall. Now this is not good. When they start eating the wall, it's not good. It's not good for our health, and it's because it's fiber deficient. So fiber deficiency only comes when we're consuming a lot of sugars, when we're consuming processed foods, and we get ourselves in trouble. So that's kind of where I want to go. The microbiome relies on complex carbohydrates to really feed itself and feed us. So it feeds itself, it stays healthy, which is beneficial to us because in return, it gives us, what we need to survive and to thrive. So how does it do this? If we look at the complex carbohydrates, which are, the fiber-based foods, the fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, etc., that we need, they become microbial metabolites. They get processed by the microbe. And that eventually goes in our bloodstream, improves metabolism and our immune system. It has blood glucose control and satiety. So we really see that the functions of this are immense. And when we look at us eating, simple sugars like cake and junk food and stuff, we see that the uptake is in the small intestines. It goes sucrose, starch, goes right into our circulation, spikes our glycemic index, and causes havoc. So really, we need to watch this process. Really, we need to look at the importance of fiber. If we look at, and we touched upon it, the geographical differences. I have a chart here that I got from this study that was done. And we're going to see that in the West, you'll see that, man, our diversity is small and poor. If we look at the other countries that aren't in the West, we see huge diversity. We see much healthier populations and a much healthier gut biome. And it's because they're eating from the land. They're eating, non-processed foods. And if you look at the industrialized populations, you'll see that just degradation in the gut biome. And this is what we need to work on to stay healthy. Not to stay healthy, to stay healthy, it helps us in well-being and longevity. So all three, it hits all three. So what do we look at in time? In time, when we look 10,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers, our microbiome, huge, diverse, exactly how we want it. The agricultural era, which was, 600 years ago, you see it already compacting, getting smaller. Industrial era, even smaller. Processed, sanitized food, oh my God, it's tiny, causing more and more diseases, allergies, etc. You know it, or you see it. So how do we optimize? How do we get this most important thing that we're dealing with, which is the gut microbiome, up to par? Well, let's start with high fiber foods. We need to consume more high fiber foods, 40 grams plus a day. And we're looking here at seeds, beans, nuts. We're looking at fruits and vegetables, raw. Look at it. We need to look at high fiber foods, and we need to be eating high fiber foods every single day. This feeds the microbiome. This keeps our microbiome healthy and keeps our bodies healthy. It is absolutely needed. Now, if we want to go to the next level, which is basically getting really pushing this diversity in our microbiome, we have to go to fermented foods. So again, the next level is fermented foods. We're talking kefir, we're talking Yogurt, yes. Kefir is much better. Sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha. These are the things that we have to incorporate in our diet and find ways to incorporate it, because it's the only thing that really moves us forward in diversifying our microbiome. And a diversified microbiome is where we get really healthy. This is what is really needed. So, you know, when we look at the fermented foods, kefir, sauerkraut, cottage cheese, kimchi, kombucha, gut shots, look at these. These are things we need. You know, fermented foods lead to decrease in inflammatory cytokines. I mean, really, the inflammation, once these inflammatory cytokines go down, you know, our state of health goes up. Less chances of chronic disease, less chances of you know, issues with heart disease, etc. This is key for our health. So when we look at fermented foods and how they do different things to the big colon, large intestines, we look at, you know, the difference. When we see the fiber foods come in, we look at more microbes, better functioning, lower inflammation, if diversity is high. If diversity is high, it doesn't change diversity. When we look at the fermented food coming in, we're seeing actual higher diversity. And when I talk higher diversity, I mean if 10% of fermented food that brings in 10% more diversity, we actually see 90% more diversity come in. So it causes us to retain new microbiomes that weren't even introduced with the fermented foods. So the fermented foods basically helps us hold on, take care of a more diverse microbiome. So it increases it, you know, ninefolds. And we're looking at a much lower inflammatory response, which is key. You know, we've also seen, you know, a lot of advertisements on probiotics and prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. Well, just to really go quickly over what this means. Prebiotic is basically fiber and, you know, has it shown to work? Yeah, it's shown to work if you already have a good, diverse microbiome. So if you're already eating healthy, it helps. If you're not eating healthy, it doesn't help. So the research up to now shows this. If we're looking at probiotics is actual introduction of the bacteria back into the gut. We're seeing that if you already have the bacteria, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't add to it. So it depends what bacteria you have. And so this is where a lot of people now are saying, okay, I need to sequence my microbiome so I know what I have and what I don't have, and I can add what I don't have in the specific probiotic. So that is a route we could take. The probiotic is good, you know, and you should talk to your physician about this after coming off an antibiotic cure. So you definitely need to, you need the probiotic to kind of, you know, reseed the microbiome population. And the postbiotic really is the metabolites and that of what the microbes are using. So it's bringing in the metabolites, which is okay, but I think, you know, with the key here being we need to go to fiber foods and we need to go to fermented foods. That's the key. So in a small recap, birthing process, super important. Make sure we do it good, do it right. Exposure to environmental antigens at an early age, meaning playing in the dirt, getting exposed to all the bacteria there are, very important to create diversity. We know that, you know, to optimize our gut biome, we need to incorporate a lot of fiber in what we eat, and we need to incorporate fermented foods. When we're looking at our glycemic index, which is important for our diet, for maintaining our health and maintaining our weight, we really need to individualize this. We need to measure it, and we need to look at what triggers us. Can we drink wine? Can we eat cheese? Can we, you know, and not have a trigger? rice. So really individualize that to see what triggers you and what you can eat so that you can personalize your diet. And trust me, there's so many diets out there. Most of them work well. Make sure you get your macros in, make sure you got your proteins in. As you age, you need to really be looking at holding muscle mass. That's the key to longevity and strength. So those are future topics, but that's on the horizon. And so, you know, in doing all this work, we have to really kind of redefine how we live, how we eat, and how we exercise. And so we're going to continue mixing it up a bit. And I'm going to start going more into exercise and continue into nutrition. And we're going to also go into mental health. So stay tuned. It's going to become more exciting and more exciting. And it's all stuff we can use today. This is the idea, to take the science, to look at what works in real life, look at what's being done, what's being said, and how we can optimize our own health, well-being, and longevity. Thank you. Please subscribe, ring the bell notification. See you next time. Bye.